Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what are secondary emotions. I'm sure you've heard me say, I'm sure you've heard other people say that anger is a secondary emotion, but it rarely is explained or fully understood what it means for anger to be a secondary emotion or what a secondary emotion is. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what are secondary emotions and why are they important. So first, let's define what are emotions. So emotions are a spontaneous and complex mental reaction to a situation or event that has the ability to influence not only your behavior, but your physiological or bodily sensations or responses. So those are emotions in general. Our primary emotions are typically those innate or inborn or unconscious emotional response to a situation or event, while our secondary emotions are typically our reaction or our emotional response once we've thought about the situation and we've applied some level of judgment or belief to that situation. So those are what our primary and our secondary emotions are. The reason why we typically highlight anger as a secondary emotion is because anger generally, although it's a natural emotional response, is something that we all have the ability to experience. It's something that we all will experience, but typically it's a response based off an expectation not being met. It's rarely a primary emotion, but it can be a primary emotion. It can be an unconscious response to a situation. However, most of the time anger is a response to an unmet need or an unmet expectation. And anger sometimes is more prevalent, or is the reaction or the emotional response that we are okay with expressing or okay with verbalizing, is because it's an emotion that most people understand. It's an emotion that's readily acceptable by most people. It's not something that's typically frowned upon as a weakness. It's sometimes seen as a strength. The ability to get angry, the ability to show or demonstrate your anger or express your anger is not typically seen as a weakness. It's sometimes seen as a strength. So we sometimes are more apt to express that because it seems more acceptable. Also, anger is that motivating emotion. Anger is that emotion that gets us motivated to move. It's that emotion that says there is something that's in my environment that's either threatening or bothering me or somehow causing some level of frustration or annoyance. So this is how I'm going to handle it. So anger is a motivating emotion, and sometimes anger can do what it comes to do, which is destroy. But it's a secondary emotion because it sometimes comes when we have an unmet expectation that happens in a situation. So for instance, let's say you are at a grocery store and you're standing in line and you are going to the grocery store in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. So your expectation is that lines will be shorter. At 2 p.m., who's going to be in the grocery store? Most people should be at work. Some people are not really out at that time. School may be letting out, so people the lines at the local grocery store should not be as long as they are. So now I have to stand in this line for 30 minutes. So now I'm angry. My initial emotion or my primary emotion may have been somewhat irritated. My initial emotion or primary emotion may have been disappointed or unsettled. That might have been my primary unconscious emotion. But after I thought about it, and I'm expecting that this grocery store line should be shorter because the time of day, and most people shouldn't be in here at this time of day, because that unmet expectation is there of I'm expecting a shorter line, but now this line is longer. Now I have anger because now I've applied my judgment and my beliefs to this situation. So now I'm feeling anger. So anger is that secondary emotion because my primary instinctual unconscious emotion was disappointment, disapproval, annoyance. So now I'm annoyed, and I'm annoyed because this line is way too long. So now I'm angry. Also, we tend to highlight anger primarily as a secondary emotion, but there are some other secondary emotions that we sometimes feel. So guilt is a secondary emotion. Guilt is an emotion that is a result of maybe a moral injury or implied or implicit responsibility for something that may or may not be within your control. Another maybe secondary emotion may be embarrassment or shame or jealousy. So all of those may be sometimes secondary emotions because those are the emotions that we have or we apply to a situation or to ourselves about a situation once we've had time to think about that situation, pass judgment on that situation, and apply our internalized beliefs about that situation. So just to give you some examples outside of the one that I've given for anger, another example might be, let's say you go to, it's almost close to Halloween. So haunted houses, corn mazes, all those things will abound. So let's say you go to one of these haunted corn mazes or haunted houses and someone jumps out at you. Your primary emotion at that point is startled or fear or surprise. All of those could be your primary emotions. But after you've thought about the situation for a moment, and you may be saying stuff to yourself, or you may be thinking to yourself, and this happens so quickly that we may not even notice that this thought process is happening. But you may be thinking to yourself, how did I let something that I knew was going to happen scare me? Why would this even scare me? It's not even that scary. And in that moment, because of the thoughts that you're having and the judgments that you're having about yourself or that situation, now you're feeling embarrassed. Now you may be feeling some level of shame. Or if you maybe like some other people, including myself, which is why I don't go to haunted houses, is you may have a tendency to maybe swing or hit or swat at something that jumps at you. Instinctually, you're not even thinking about it. But instinctually, out of fear, that's your behavioral response. But after you've had time to kind of think about it, you're saying to yourself, how could I hit this? This is probably a kid who's working here on the weekends to get money. I feel horrible now. I've hit someone. I wonder if I hurt someone. So now you feel guilt. So that's the secondary emotion. So those secondary emotions may look like guilt, embarrassment, shame, or anger. Anger at the person that jumped out at you, or anger at yourself, or even allowing yourself to feel fearful of something that you knew was going to happen. So those are the secondary emotions that we apply to the situation because now we've judged it. The thoughts that we've had, the beliefs that we have about the situation allow us to think about it a little differently, and we have a different feeling about it. Another example is, let's say you lose something that you care about. So that's a person, a job, a relationship. Your primary emotion may be hurt. It may be sadness. It may be disappointment. It may be grief. But when you have time to think about, depending on the situation, you may feel numb because you want to shut off those emotions. You thought about it. You said, this feels overwhelming. I feel uncomfortable. So I'm shutting down everything. Or you may think to yourself, like, I keep having this happen with jobs or relationships. I keep losing things that I feel are important to me. So you may start to feel empty based off the thoughts that you're having about that experience. Or you may feel angry. Like, how could they leave me? How could this person I love die so suddenly? How could this job I like, how could I lose it? Although I had no connection to why I lost it. It could have just been layoffs. It could have been something that was completely outside of your control. But now you're angry because now I have to deal with the repercussions of not having a job. So your initial emotions, or your primary emotions to that situation or to that loss, is grief, is sadness, is hurt, is disappointment. But those secondary emotions, once you've applied those thoughts and those judgments, and again, I want to highlight that we do this sometimes unconsciously. It happens so quickly and so much outside of our awareness that we don't even stop to actually think about what are the thoughts that are driving those secondary emotions. What are the judgments that are driving those secondary emotions? And in this case, those thoughts and those judgments that may be driving those secondary emotions could be things such as, I've worked hard for this company for most of my life. How dare they lay me off or fire me? I put my all into this relationship. How dare my relationship partner decide they no longer want to be in this relationship? So it's anger. I put all of my emotions into this situation. I felt all of the things that I can feel, and I just feel like I have nothing else to lose or feel anymore. So I feel empty. I feel numb. So those are the secondary emotions that could be secondary to sadness or any other emotion. So what I hope you take from this video today is that our emotions are spontaneous, complex responses to a situation or event. And we have primary and we have secondary emotions. Our primary emotions are those instinctual, unconscious responses. Our secondary emotions are our emotional response based off of our judgments and our thoughts. And that tends to happen sometimes even without us being aware of what's actually happening in the moment. Now, what that looks like is that we initially feel that primary emotion when something happens. We just unconsciously or innately feel whatever we're feeling about a situation. But once we've given thought to a situation, once we've actually thought about what we think about the situation, our beliefs about the situation, our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about the world around us or the people in our environment, all of those go into how those secondary emotions present themselves. And the common secondary emotions sometimes are things such as anger. That's one we see a lot. Guilt, shame, embarrassment, jealousy. Those also tend to be those secondary emotions. And one way we can start to assess maybe how we're feeling or how our thoughts are affecting how we feel about a situation is starting to ask ourselves, what am I thinking? How do I see this situation? How do I see myself in this situation? How do I see other people around me in this situation? And start to get a sense of what are the thoughts that may be contributing to this other emotion that I feel. And our secondary emotions are typically those emotions that apply some sense of judgment to ourselves or to someone else around us, and it could make us see ourselves in a different light, could make us invalidate ourselves, invalidate a situation, or invalidate other people. So being able to understand our emotions is just a starting point to being able to have better control or regulation over your emotions. So this is why we need to understand what our primary emotions are, what our secondary emotions are, because it gives us the ability to take some level of control or at least regulation of those emotions. Because when we're able to identify what we're feeling, when we're able to identify what we're thinking and how what we're thinking contributes to how we're feeling, then we can put some things into place, whether it be solutions, whether it be ways of distressing or dealing with the emotion differently. Then we have the ability to take a step back and say, how do I want to handle this situation or this emotion, not simply based off the emotion that I'm having about this situation or event. I hope this helps you understand your emotions a little bit better so that you know the difference between what you're feeling unconsciously without any regard for your beliefs or your thoughts or your judgments, as opposed to what you're just feeling because this is what my thoughts are telling me, my judgments about myself, my beliefs, my world around me, and things that are happening in my environment. This is what I hope you take from this video today. As always, I hope you take something from this video today that was helpful, that was informative. Feel free to jot down any thoughts, questions, or comments you have below. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.